All right.
Alrighty.
Secret Invasion, episode 3. Quick impressions. Bone, what'd you think?
Oh, I'm going first?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I thought this was the best episode. It had a lot of suspense. I thought it was pretty interesting. It wasn't as hokey as some of the other episodes. But I just don't know where it's going. I haven't read the comic. I mean, I watched somebody's video on it. I'd like to read it. But it's obviously different than that. But I just don't know where it's going. And I just cannot reconcile. How are they going to tie this all up in 3 more episodes? Is it 6?
Yeah. More.
So it's not bad. It's not bad.
My first impression of this episode, I really liked it. I was expecting a couple things to take place a little differently than they did as it was going on, which we'll get into when we talk about it. But I think this built on the last episode. It seems like people are dropping though a little. They're going to run out of main characters pretty quick at this rate. But so far I've liked it. It's living up to a spy who not sure kind of what's coming next, and it's one thing after the next. So first impression, I like it. I've liked the 3 episodes so far. And we'll get more into it.
Right, obviously.
Yeah, but so far I like what's going on. I'm not as lost in the dark as Bone is about where it might be going. I could see a couple different endings on this, but it's not gonna. It will be nothing like the comics. So that's where like we've talked to like just kind of disassociate with what the comics did.
Right.
But so far, I think the character development's getting better, and some of the beginning to see kind of the lines and sides formulate. So it's taking a little better shape than it was in the first 2 episodes.
Absolutely. I agree with Bone that this is the best one episode by far. It's pretty exciting. It's not like extremely exciting, but there's some great stuff. There's some great stuff going. One of so like a couple things. First, so Rhodey's a Skrull. He's a Skrull. And I wasn't down on episode 2, but episode 3 kind of confirmed he's a Skrull. You guys pick up on that?
But there was a person in the American government that was a Skrull?
No, well, not just that. There's 2 other things.
I did not pick up on it.
You didn't pick up on the other things?
Well, I like we talked about last time, I already figured.
I know, but you didn't pick up that was a guessing.
Whatever
they confirmed basically in this episode that he's a Skrull.
Whatever it was, I missed that.
All right, I'll tell you.
But I
tell you.
already had pretty much chalked up that he was.
I'll tell you
Skrull.
2 things that occurred. Nick, when he goes into the admiral's house, and in Talos, admiral's got Talos. He says, "No one calls me Nick," but in the conversation with Rhodey called him Nick. In the conversation. Second, if you listen to the last part, the voice on the phone, that's Don Cheadle's voice on the phone that calls her, that she calls and she says she needs to speak to Gravik. That's Don Cheadle's voice. So it's fairly. I mean, they could do all kinds of twists and they do all kind of subversions, but it's pretty fairly. It's 95%, I would say, confirmed that Rhodey's a Skrull. Whether I mean, there's obviously all kind of underhanded things they could do. They could make it into a trick. They could make it into a Skrull who's about to replace Rhodey, and he hasn't replaced him yet, but he's taken on his face and his voice, and then because they can just take the voice, but isn't in the memories, but he can take the picture. Just a picture, they can take the face. But most likely, it's pretty obvious that Rhodey's a Skrull. Confirmed. So that's some crazy stuff. That's some great stuff. I wasn't ready to jump on it. I didn't want to believe, but I was ready to. After it was funny. I'm reading like stuff on it because apparently there's another headline. I didn't see where it came from, but they said that Don Cheadle's not going to be in the War Machine armor in Secret Invasion, and then all the comments were like, yeah, well, the Skrulls don't have the War Machine armor, so because everybody's just accepted he's a Skrull.
Well, that goes right back to them saying there won't be any superheroes in this, and like I said, after we were talking about episode 2, that whole interaction between Fury and Rhodey was so out of character for James Rhodey. Now, obviously, the MCU and the comics are different, but I mean, Rhodey was like the guy that Fury put with Stark, and in the comics, Rhodey wore the armor for a while and was Iron Man when Stark had to make an appearance and they needed Iron Man and Stark in the same place, and Rhodey was his bodyguard, and they were like best friends, and it was all because Fury set it up. So
that's the comics, of course.
But the relationship there was, you're talking about, the conversation was so completely out of character for what James Rhodes, aka War Machine, would have ever said to Nick Fury, who at one point or another was his superior and a friend and a colleague in the field. I think when you've been in military situations and you've been in the field together, there are certain things that are just accepted, that you might be my superior and I might have to do this, I might be commanded to do this, but you're still going to treat that person with a certain level of respect and just understanding and empathy. And none of that was shown by Rhodes in that scene. And it just was a complete red flag to me that, well, Rhodes is a Skrull.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I think I even made that clear the last time.
Well, see, I think you got to keep in mind things are a little different in the MCU. Like, we have never seen on screen, we've never seen Nick Fury and Don and Rhodey on screen together, like having a conversation, like obviously the scene at the end of Endgame, the whole move scene, like he's in the back, whatever. But we've never seen them have a conversation on screen until episode 2 of the Secret Invasion. We have never seen that. So as far as their relationship in the MCU isn't necessarily the same as it would be in the comics. Necessarily, we don't really know what that relationship is.
Yeah, but the conversation,
obviously, Skrull Rhodey said, well, Skrull Rhodey said he respected Fury. In that conversation, he said he respected him, and I wouldn't be surprised if that came from the memories of the actual Rhodey. But I don't think it's the same as the comics, where like he wouldn't go that far, right? You know what I mean?
I would.
But I think the point that can be gathered from it is that Rhodey's character, as far as respect for the chain of command and all of that, in the Iron Man movies and in the MCU with his relationship with Tony Stark, would kind of lend to that agreement that he's not necessary. He isn't kind of that person who would be willing to kind of, like, he has a more respect for the book and the chain of command and all of that then he would, I get your point. I do get your point. And obviously, there's something there, because a lot of people, there's always speculation, but a lot of people thought that he was a Skrull already between these 2 episodes, and then seeing this episode, it's basically confirmed. Now, they do like to do subversion and switch ups.
So there's something that took place in this episode that has kind of blown my mind, and as the scene was progressing, I expected, as the car was getting further away, that someone was gonna stand up and.
I don't think she's dead.
I don't think she's dead.
I'm pretty certain she's not dead, because in the trailers there are several scenes in the trailers that she hasn't done yet. Specifically, one where she's back to back with Nick Fury's wife. They're about to fight some people or whatever. They're back to back. All those. Now Marvel has been known to put scene-ins in trailers to change
every movie that's done that.
Everyone.
But I know of. I mean,
I don't think that I don't honestly think they're going to waste an actress who's so big and a character like that. I don't think they're going to waste her.
That is pretty much, aside from Samuel Jackson, she's probably the biggest name in the series. And
what's her name?
Emilia Clarke. And to just kill her off in the 3rd episode is.
You were trying to see that we did.
I don't know who she
you were
is.
Trying to prove that we don't have no.
So
but here's the thing.
No, I don't think like that. I don't know her name.
You don't know her name. Well, not everybody does. Here's the deal.
Hey, what did you say she was in prior?
Well, she was in the Han Solo movie, but the big thing was she was the Khaleesi, or she's from Game of Thrones. She was the mother of dragons and this
main character.
She's one of 4 primary characters.
So basically, I'm the only person that doesn't know who she is.
She's blown up and become very big. But the thing is, story wise, they need her. Story wise,
100%.
She's that eliminates any sort of any stakes. You know, now they were kind of they were kind of setting up a little bit Nick Fury's wife. They could be setting that up where she goes in there and she has a change of heart and she could be in a similar position as Gaia. But overall, like if she was eliminated, then it's like, all right, what is there, like what does he have over them other than like his plans to kill the humans?
Well, even that, if she's not dead, she can't go back to Gravik and go back in that organization unless she changes her appearance.
Unless she changes her appearance
and becomes somebody else, which is possible because she can even be a man. That's the other thing with them. They don't have to.
But it's not probable. More than likely, she'll just get with her dad or whatever.
She'll end up with Fury and
yeah. But what I'm just saying, I'm just saying it just doesn't. They did the way, but it just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem. And then I was hearing that they really have a lot of plans for her character. Or at least that was the belief that she was going to be further on in the MCU. So realistically, they're not just going to, kind of. I don't believe she's dead. I didn't. For a second, I was like, "This is big," but then I was like, as I thought about it, I was like, I don't.
When I saw this, because we just watched it literally. For if you're watching and you're viewing this right now, and you watch, we literally just watched the episode together, and immediately we're doing this. So I will tell you that. I honestly thought when she got shot in the left side, like which is side for a human heart, but I'm not sure if I remember correctly. I think in the Captain Marvel, don't they have two hearts?
I think so.
So
apparently the Skrull who was a little boy who could do all those amazing things that were supposed to impress Nick Fury, that to give him all this responsibility or whatever, he doesn't know where to shoot a Skrull to kill him. I'm only going to shoot you once, so we'll see you later.
So she drops and immediately changes into a Skrull, and I'm sitting like going, which.
Well, I mean that's generally how it works, though. And when they die, they
immediately change
back.
But she was like, she's not even on the ground all the way, and she's changing into a Skrull. Some of them are on the ground for a hot minute before they change, and they're dead, and then they change. So this time, like she barely has hit the ground and immediately changes.
With a lot of what they're doing, there's certain lacks of consistency. Like honestly, honestly, there's a lot lacks of consistency. Like the people change their clothes, but then like the Skrull guards get shot and only their faces and arms change and their clothes stay on. I mean, in Captain Marvel, Nick Fury incapacitates Skrulls. Now they're like superhuman. But in the Captain Marvel, they weren't stronger than humans. But now they're like stronger. They're Captain America, the super strength, all these things. There's a lack of consistency.
Well, I don't think there's a lack of. I follow what you're saying, but first off, I think that she changed instantly to pretend to be dead. Now on the other one,
play dead. That's something you learn when you're a kid.
Gravik said, "We're becoming SuperSkrulls." And we're gonna have power.
So let me ask you a question.
So I think that they're doing stuff with the radiation and in the areas they're in to give themselves.
Okay, no, it's not. Well, it's not. I don't know. It's the radiation.
I don't know how they're doing it, but I think
here's what it is.
Gonna play in.
Here's what it is, right? If you remember, I don't know if you guys noticed this in the. I don't think it was the last episode. It's the DNA thing. It's a Super Skrull thing. They have DNA from Extremis. They have DNA on the computer. When she was looking in the computer in episode 2, they had Call Obsidian, which is one of Thanos' guys. They had DNA from Extremis, Frost Beast. There's a couple other ones. Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
And the ones that died on Earth that they got.
Well, those creatures. So they're doing DNA work with the DNA to be able for the Skrulls to be able to not only shapeshift but take on powers, and they've already completed it because if you remember the scene with the stab.
Yeah.
He has Extremis.
He
has Extremis. The Extremis DNA. So he's already a Super Skrull. So there's all of that. That's another cool kind of Easter egg thing that was thrown out there, which would be curious to see what the future with the Skrulls turns into.
So
you got anything for us?
I had a question, but I don't remember what it was. Now.
Well, listen, I'm a little more excited than obviously it's gonna. I think it's gonna keep building up. It's not a total flop. I wasn't hating on it. There's a lot of people that were really just not into it. I did understand that it didn't have a lot of steam at the start, but this was a fairly because there was more at stake. With the whole UN nuke situation, there was a little more at stake. There was a little more dramatic.
That whole
a little less exposition.
That whole set of scenes where the plane is getting closer and closer into that circle, and the two guys on the sub are about to launch, and the guy's like, I think we need to call and verify this, and it's all like freaking, and they're about to launch, and then they get to stand down. The one guy's like,
What's interesting about that is
I thought for the episode and the series and where they were going, they were going to do it. That it needed to. They needed to do that to create this chaos, to get people in places to start realizing, wait, what's going on? And they might take the angle where members of all these NATO governments that haven't been infiltrated will start realizing, all right, there's something not right. And then Talos comes out and makes a public address.
See, that's not realistic though. That's why they didn't do it, because honestly, that's just not going to happen. Like, honestly, if the people are just going to start shooting nukes. If a nuke goes off, no one's going to go, let's figure out who shot the nuke. There's going to be this knee-jerk reaction. That's why, it's going to be that way. And then you consider the Secretary General of NATO is a Skrull. So even if people are trying to be reasonable, he's going to be pushing them to nuke, right? So it's like, obviously, if they did that, realistically, I don't think it would work.
Well, you might be right. But
so why would you, if you're trying to take over a planet, why do you want to destroy it?
Well, they're not destroying it because the radiation doesn't bother them.
Yeah, they're immune.
That's why they stay in nuclear plants. So they're trying to nuke the world.
The radiation doesn't bother them, but if there's no trees and no sky and no healthy water, what do they eat? They
don't necessarily. But they're growing their own. They're growing their own like Skrull planet food. Remember the weird Skrull fruit.
And so it grows.
So it's
in radiation.
Well, they have this superior technology, and assuming it's probable if radiation doesn't really damage them, then it probably wouldn't really damage their crops. But it could also be like realistically, it could also just be like those guys aren't considering it. Like he isn't considering the full extent that a nuclear war would cause, because the question it's kind of murky when you're talking about an alien planet. How does their plants are they affected by our sun, by the lack of our sun? All those questions, it's kind of murky. I think the basis they did is they set up the radiation doesn't bother them, so that's why they want to nuke everything, because then they can still live here because radiation doesn't bother them, but we'll all be dead. And that's the basic sort of idea they're kind of cultivating there. But one thing I thought was interesting was in that scene, because that guy, right? So you're in the scene in the sub. That one guy who's like pushing him is a Skrull, and I'm pretty sure it's that guy with the hat.
The guy in the hat with the yellow.
Yeah,
and all
but what's crazy is he jumps up and pulls the key out and stops it when instead of it's set up like it looked like the other guy thought he was gonna just go ahead anyways, but he jumps up and pulls it out, which was kind of almost like he's having kind of second guesses. So there could be a whole. He might just he might save Gaia. Like it could be a thing where he saves her and brings her to her dead.
If you look at the Skrulls. And it's not even from the comics, because it's the same in the comics as it is here. If you look at the Skrulls, they come from a planet that was destroyed by the Kree. And their race has been reduced to 1 million that are left. And then you have this same race now that has been allowed to live on Earth in relative safety and anonymity since 1995. And now they're on the verge of genociding a race that's opened their doors and allowed them to come. So you figure that some of them are not going to be fully entrenched in the idea of, hey, let's just kill all the humans. Like Talos is like,
well, some of them aren't. Obviously Talos says there's people who aren't affected by that.
And do you look at it? There's 1 million of them. 1 million.
Probably more than that.
But that was the number they basically.
But so 1 million before any children were born or whatever else, and they've killed a handful of them. So you've got roughly 1 million-ish. But you figure they're not all on board with what Gravik's doing. Now, a bunch of them,
the majority,
because they've the council elected, and the whole conversation about with Gravik and Talos about how he's the general and why do you think they elected him? Well, they elected him because he had a whole room full of goons, and whoever didn't stand was going to get killed.
But really, one person outside of Shirley, the lady who he let leave, was the one who said it. Like it was clearly he bullied them. Clearly, he had the prime minister lady on his side, and The other guy, the Fox News guy, the FXN News guy, didn't say anything. The Japanese guy didn't say anything. The only person, one Shirley didn't vote and she walked out. But before that, the only person who seemed to be an issue was the guy who's the NATO general, Secretary General, and then he gets whatever. So it was kind of convincing. It was I think it's half convincing, half bullying. He kind of bullied them, but he also I think that he kind of had like, kind of had points that they agreed and saw what he was saying. And he's playing this sort of character that is they're setting him up to be kind of, and people can kind of empathize with aspects of him. So he's not playing just this dastardly
I think it's interesting that with a lot of these characters that are crazy, right? Because this guy's crazy and his plan just doesn't make sense. And I think people put a lot of thought into trying to rationalize or at least understand what this person is doing because it really doesn't make any goddamn sense. And so the thing about crazy is it's crazy.
Well,
it doesn't make sense.
It makes sense to me.
I think it doesn't make sense to the viewer right now that isn't fully vested in the story and what's going on until later when you get a more clear, because
what doesn't make sense outside
once they get more involved in showing how the Skrulls are getting powers and what their plans are beyond. Because they're going to have to unveil that. It might,
the
might
powers
come to some clear.
The powers
clarity.
and everything is basically for the Avengers in case the Avengers come back, right? So the setup is kill the humans, take over the planet. They're not going to be here to stop us. The biggest thing, the weakness that they have that we don't have is radiation.
So you're telling me that the person, Gravik, is that his name? Yeah. He doesn't understand that just previous to this beings came from another planet and they wiped out half the universe. And that's why their promise wasn't fulfilled. He can't really wrap his brain around why Fury was gone. And so let's wipe out an entire planet full of people. That's not crazy.
Well, the issue wasn't that just because Fury came back. The issue is Fury came back and then he still didn't fulfill his promise. The issue is he made the promise in 1995. And they're 20, 30 years later, they didn't see Captain Marvel. The promise was him and Captain Marvel will find them a new planet. A new planet.
Right. Like, hey, Fury, hey, remember that time you promised us this stuff? Like, there was no betrayal.
We don't know that didn't occur. The issue is he had all these guys working. He had these guys working for them. He didn't bring any of this. The Skrulls, which I think we talked about last time, which I wasn't sure of, but which is after the blip, then all the million Skrulls showed up. Before that, it was like 20 Skrulls. Right, he says like 19 of them joined. I think it was that small group of Skrulls.
It was after the blip.
Yeah, it wasn't
right. It was between the two movies. I think is the way they explained it. So after Thanos snaps his finger, kills half the universe, and Maria Hill and Fury are gone. They're dead, and that's where Talos is like, "Well, I got all these people out here. They're gonna die, and the Kree still hunting them down. We'll bring them here." So then the blip gets reversed later. And Fury's back. And they're like, all right, he's going to do something.
It was 5 years? That he's
5 years. 5 years where he's gone.
I can see how that's a major betrayal.
And then after the 5 years.
I can see how someone a being would think that was a major betrayal and that it deserves to wipe out an entire race.
Here's the thing.
You're
missing the entire 1995. And here's the other thing, right? Because here's the it's more like this, right? I promise you. One, Captain Marvel's part of this promise. She just disappears. We don't see her on Earth for 20 whatever years.
But it's like this. If I said, until the end of Endgame.
Hold on. It's like this. I said this. Listen, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to pay you this, whatever. I'm going to get that for you, right? Just do this for me. All right. Just keep doing this for me. And it's 20 years of, all right, we're going to do that. But go ahead and take care of this situation over here for me. Can you take care? Because that's what he had all these guys working for him as spies for this entire time, doing all these things. And there was this whole promise of, listen, I'm going to get you this planet right now. You guys need to help me out.
So 20 years. So you're going to do something. And I'm going to pay you for it. So what is it? Like it's $1,000. It may take me a few weeks to get it. Let's say find a planet. Find us a planet that's suitable for us. How long does that take?
Yeah, but listen, it's not. Listen, one. When you're talking about emotions and stuff like that, there's a certain lack of rationale, and we understand that. When you're angry, certain logic doesn't matter. So in the end, when someone gets upset and they're mad because they're like, listen, we matter. And we're just kind of expected to do all this thing. You're not keeping your promises, whatever. And then they live in this sort of life of, I want to be myself. And you have to tell me not to be all these other people. I have to keep pretending to be a human and hide. and they're, obviously young, and then there's these emotions. Certain logic and reason doesn't matter, because that is true. There is that whole side where it's like, yeah, it isn't his fault that he disappeared for 5 years. All of that, right? Even though they are playing the certain aspect of, even when he came back, he didn't really talk to anyone there, and they're playing that up, that basically he went to save her and whatever. And because even his wife was like, you just didn't shoot, you just kept disappearing. They're playing that up. But even then, there is a lack of rationale to the whole emotional side of it, as there would be, right? As there would be. As there would be, but I don't think crazy is the right word. Just like, is it crazy when you get upset about something? Is it crazy when you get upset about something? Like there are times it is, but there is a certain there's a difference. Like okay,
genocidal
is crazy. Is crazy.
That's crazy.
Well, I'm not gonna say it's sane. But you're talking about a world of beings and us and them and difference like that, and it's like.
You would just to me it's like you would think that someone they're living amongst humans,
right? But they're looking at humans like animals. That's the same thing.
But I'm saying
he said dogs are better than humans. Like
right,
dogs.
Which okay, there's other Skrulls that don't feel that way,
right?
But he's the only one that we've heard say that, and so he's the charismatic leader. He's the Hitler-esque.
That doesn't mean they don't agree.
It doesn't mean they do, because what he was talking about is the person you thought that wasn't going to. Maybe was that you just said that was going to turn the
he's a new guy,
the nuke trigger or whatever.
Well, listen, I'm not here making an excuse to say it is saying.
Sounds like you're a Skrull.
No. Yeah, listen. What are you talking? Listen, I came here to fire you. I volunteered.
So at this point, Marvel is the people, the shows and what they've done recently haven't helped themselves with continuity. They haven't helped themselves with editorial and character development. So this could just be one of those things where, well, the blip was 5 years. That show with Captain Marvel was 1995, and then we can just say he went up to the saber and
they do that,
and then just okay, and then we're just gonna say these two kids. This kid is now gonna be he's just gonna be like, well, they left me hanging this whole time, and that's their whole plot.
Right. It just seems to me that there should have been some sort of betrayal, like a real something that stings that could be misinterpreted by someone who's a little crazy, as opposed. It just seems. I'll say this: the cinematography on the show is excellent.
You don't. As I said, so if someone is emotional and illogical, then it doesn't really take much. It doesn't really take. I think not giving them any help and seeming to only use them, would be enough of a betrayal for someone who's crazy. And already, because I think with the way they set him up too, they say, set him up with this trauma where he's got this, he's this lone survivor who's survived because he came back, he's by himself, right? And she was like, he's this kid, he was a kid, which is like, he's the lone survivor and he fought off the Kree.
The other thing that the other thing that's kind of the other part here is, they already established that in the exact solar system, there's a planet that's currently unoccupied that would be, or not the planetoid that's completely unoccupied, that all the Skrulls could be living on already. And it's something that Marvel's just ignoring. And that's Titan, where the moon Titan, because that's where Thanos and Star Fox are
talking about the
from.
one where Thanos threw the moon at Iron Man, and that one?
But hold on. Titan is I'm not sure about this. Clarify if I'm wrong. In the comics, it's the moon of Saturn, but I think Thanos refers to it as his home world.
Yes.
I don't think it's necessarily the moon.
No, it is. It is the same place.
Are you certain? In the MCU? How do you know that?
Titan, it's the moon of Saturn, Titan.
In the MCU?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Well, that's the same place because he's from Titan.
How do you know that? In other words, let's look it up. In other words, just because it's using the word Titan.
Changed it in the comics. They've changed it in the film, but
that's what I'm saying. The film is not.
In the comics, they lived inside the planet, inside the planetoid, and in this, he made the surface livable.
Right. But
so I don't know, but still,
no one said Eros is his brother in the comics either. Like, do you
Eros in the comics? Yes.
I'm sorry, in the movie. Sorry, not the comics.
Do you need a Google? Is that what you need?
I need a Google.
I'm going to throw you a Google.
So
y'all keep talking while
I just want to say that I want to say this, that the difference between.
But either way, one real quick, even if it's not in the same solar system, Titan is uninhabited now because everybody's dead there.
Right, but wasn't the atmosphere right? So it was. I mean, things were floating all around.
That was just the way that planetoid was. That's just the way that they made that world look, or that moon, or whatever, whichever it ends up being in there. But they were all running around. The Guardians and Iron Man and Doc Strange and Thanos and his people were running around with no masks. The atmosphere there is totally livable.
Right, but wasn't it because Thanos had warned? He had warned the leaders of that planet
because of resources.
That there was problems, right? So it seemed like it was uninhabitable.
His warning was
he brought another moon down. Remember, Tony Stark said, "If you throw another moon at me." Right. And so back to the other thing, that there's a difference between someone when they're upset.
So this does. It just says that Titan. It just says that Titan is a desolated home planet. It doesn't say where it is. It says that it's a desolated home planet. It doesn't say where.
Yeah, but the point was that there are locations that they could be using, and not to mention, as advanced as they are, I mean, the U.S. government and Fury and them and Shield has said, "Hey, let's build a large moon base. You guys live on the moon. You can operate on Earth as you need. You can have the moon. You can use it." They could have done something.
I'm not saying they couldn't have.
Right. But, and of course there's all conjecture. But and it's for the story of this show. So for now it's going all right.
On a slight side note, let me just say, Nick Fury's wife is so dumb. I was sitting there like, oh, it was like one, like it was like.
You mean the fact that she revealed herself to be sympathetic to?
No, but she answered. No, I mean like two things, right? She answers this like, does she not realize like who her husband is? Does she really think he isn't suspecting her when she answers this phone call? She just like ignores it, and he's like, no, and he already told you suspicious. She revealed she was sympathetic, and she kind of is like, I went back to who I was before, and blah 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 blah, and and so then she answers this phone call. She refuses. She lets it ring like, that's suspicious. Why aren't you answering that guy in front of me? I'm your husband. And then she's like, very like unclick. No, I do not have that information for you at this moment. Like, not clear about who she's talking to, what's going on.
Right.
Well, and we already can tell
because she's words on a page.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it's just like
all that character is words on a page. No, so it's the writer.
It's clearly obvious. It's like, listen, if you're at home with your wife and she's like suspiciously answering a phone call, and like you're like, you're gonna get that, and she's like, it's not important, and you're already like suspicious of her, right? Let's say she was cheating. You're suspicious of her cheating on you, because this is similar, not the same, but similar. And then she like has her phone's ringing, and you're like, who's calling you? And she's like, it's not important. And then you're like, go ahead, answer it. And then she's like, hello, I will call you back. And you're like, no, I cannot talk to you about that right now. You're going, what? But it's Nick freaking Fury. So then she turns out to be this double agent, right? And it's like, does she really think her husband doesn't suspect her? And then the other thing, right? And this is kind of annoyed me, borderline. And this shows you how much like Hollywood and people in Hollywood, like kind of their politics, and how afraid they are of guns. Because I'm like going, what's in the box, right? And I was so disappointed. She goes and just this dramatic. She drives all the way, and she's going to this place. She pulls out this lockbox, and she's like, the guy. She looks at the guy like, I can't let you see what's in this last box.
I'll leave you alone.
And he leaves. She opens it up. It's an envelope. I'm like, man, what is in this lockbox? It's just 40. A gun. And you're like, okay, she left the life, and she is like so afraid. Like, she is like, okay, you can't just lock the gun in a safe in your house. No, I have got to put this gun in a safe, in a vault somewhere, so it is secure. It's like,
yeah, I was wondering because ridiculous. The way she reacted was that was she given the key or something? Was this a message? Go at this time. Under these circumstances, and this is what you need to do, kind of a thing.
It could be. So that's the problem. I was starting to like, okay, is this a special Skrull killing gun? Is that the gun that killed JFK? Like, is it a gun like she had to hide it because if they found it, it would implicate something? Like, it has to be a special gun. It can't just be a basic gun. It's just a pistol. And she's just like, I gotta lock this up somewhere safe. I gotta get to a bank vault. So
the gun that shot.
Like, is she a psychopath? And she's like, listen, I might sleep kill people. So I gotta lock this gun out of my house because I don't know if I walk in my sleep and I shoot somebody, I'll be responsible.
Can we just all agree that the lizard people are really the problem here?
They are the problem.
And they're
lizard
pervasive.
Sleep kill.
It's the lizard people.
I'm sleep killing people.
Wow. I remember the last time I sleep killed somebody.
It's freaking. It's a horrible feeling to wake up and realize you murdered somebody in your sleep.
Man.
You're
Look,
like,
I knew a guy who used
sorry,
to
honey,
sleep
I didn't mean
right.
to
He
sleep
didn't kick
kill
his
you.
wife out of bed because he was trying to change gears.
Anyways, it's
Sleep driving.
interesting to see where it goes. It's interesting to see where it goes from now.
It's like each episode, they're having to work into some dramatic ending with each episode to the point where last episode it was, does Fury know that his wife's a Skrull? And then this very first thing in the episode is you have the flashback with them meeting in the diner and you realizing, oh, he knows.
So you're saying the next episode, the first thing we're going to see is Gaia sit up.
Or I don't know, but it's almost like that right now. I understand why this was the best episode because there was something going on in the middle of it that wasn't just dialogue and people wandering around. This had that whole suspense and tension on, are they going to nuke the UN plane? And circling back to that, because you were talking about, well, they would start a war because they would had to figure out who nuked who. Well, everybody on the planet would know who nuked them because the nuke's coming from a British submarine and then going to hit a UN plane. So it won't be so NATO is not going to go nuke England. What's going to occur is that the UN delegation and other sides, like maybe Russia or China or enemies to NATO, are going to be looking at, why are you nuking a UN delegation over the Atlantic? What the hell is wrong with you?
You really think people are going to be that rational when a nuke gets fired off?
Well, no, but
I think at first they will.
Yes, because you're going to see an English submarine launches a nuke to take out the UN delegation coming from America to Europe. And you're like, at that point, NATO is going to be like, what was that about? And then the Russians are going to be like, no, what was that about? So you would have battle lines drawn.
And then the Chinese are going to be like, no. What was that
and
about?
it depends on the real question there is, in the MCU at this time, what country represents the Secretary General for the UN? Because that would have some determination. Because
I think he sounded French.
So, well, then so you got
That's funny. I was just going to say, and the French will say, "Oh, what was that?
What was that?"
So
listen.
So, but my point is that each episode they've gone out of their way to have some crazy.
I think that's
so what
trying to get overcritical.
Is Fury's no.
Go ahead.
So Fury's wife, she'll go do something, and either you say she's a double agent.
Well, she's a triple agent.
Or well,
She
it
could be a
depends
triple
on
agent.
Is she about to stab Fury in the back, or is she deciding, well, I got to get involved, or what's going on? But so they kill her off at the end of the next episode. That's what I'm going to tell you. She's the next one that gets the bullet, because that's how they've set up each episode.
Okay, but hold on. I think hold on.
That's interesting.
Hold on.
We'll see if he's right.
I think we're being overly critical about that being an issue. As far as
I
think that's naturally what one does is that's a common thing is cliffhangers at the end of chapters. What's going to occur next? That's not a surprise, and that's not an issue. I don't think that like to say every single one's a cliffhanger. I think that that's normal and expected because you're trying to get people to tune in, and specifically considering how slow. Like, honestly, that's one of the only things it's got going for it, considering like how slow things have been. The two things it's got going for it, this episode's ramped it up. Two things it's got going for it is the Rhodey situation, because a lot of people were going, is Rhodey a Skrull? Is he a Skrull? And trying to figure that out. And the cliffhangers, we were going, well, let's see what occurs. Outside of that, like, what is there to keep your interest, right? It's a bunch of exposition.
So right now, you have a limited cast. And you have 3 more episodes. And you have Gravik and his crew of bad guys. So for the bad guy Skrulls, they can be anybody at any given time. So those characters are just throwaway characters outside of him.
The red shirts. We're going to call them red shirts.
Red shirts from Star Trek. I like that. So those guys, it doesn't even matter who the actors are. They're just bodies. They're just it's a never-ending body count right now because
But
there's a
that,
million.
you
Skrulls.
need some. It's a secret invasion.
Right. So
Are you saying Ice-T is a Skrull too?
So on the other side, you got Talos, and you got Nick Fury, and then you had Gaia, the daughter, Emilia Clarke's character, and now you have Fury's wife, regardless of where she's at, and you had Don Cheadle. Well, Don Cheadle, I'm immediately James Rhodes. I'm with you. He's a Skrull. He's out of the picture, unless they save him and find a way to get in there and infiltrate.
Yeah, but he's not where the War Machine side.
So
I don't know.
I get that. So maybe that's where Gaia and Fury's wife infiltrate to try to free some of these people that have been taken, and you would have where Don Cheadle ends up helping, but he's not. Doesn't have his armor. Maybe, just maybe. So. But you have 4, and then the lady, the MI6 lady or the Russian lady, whatever it is, I couldn't tell if she was Russian or English. The one that when he was in Moscow in the first episode, that was in the butcher shop, that was on the phone. She's
British. Her accent is British.
So you have potentially 5 people, and if Guy is dead, because we're not sure, but if she's actually dead, that's 4, and then if they use Fury's wife as the next cliffhanger to really push Fury over the edge, and she's the next one to go, you're running out of people to save the world.
What if they bring back Robot Hill?
And my thing is, unless they're going to introduce somebody else, and somebody else is coming, the Cavalry, and now...
Cavalry?
Well, no. Like
Cavalry?
The Cavalry from S.H.I.E.L.D.
I mean, Cavalry.
Cavalry,
The Cavalry?
That's one of those,
no, that would be cool.
If she shows
that
up,
would be cool.
That would be... No, there's a character from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Called the Cavalry.
Then they called her the Cavalry.
Isn't it Agent Cho? It's not Cho. Why did I say Cho? That's so racist.
I can't remember that character's name in the show, but she's Fennec Shan from the Star Wars stuff.
Why can't I remember her name? I know the actress is Ming Na Wen.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, she was that the one that was like always brooding.
Google it. Come on, I know.
I mean, because they keep saying there's got to be some.
But even then, still, because you're talking about SuperSkrulls, so there has to be something. And that is one of the biggest questions, right? And it could be just some there's all kinds of things that are possible.
Linda May.
Yeah, Agent May. I said Chio. Listen. You know.
Well, I mean, so they're really saying that I really don't think they're gonna have superheroes in this at all. So at some point, they're gonna have to do something.
There's quite a few things.
Or have some. They're gonna have to blow the lid off of the subterfuge of the Skrulls.
What would be cool is if they brought in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but like we said, most likely not going to occur. There's a couple things to consider. There's a really cheap. Well, there's Saber. Because there's people up in Saber. What's going on with Saber? What is that? There's a really cheap thing of there could be some Skrulls who are not with them, and then Talos pulls a little Skrull army together. There's probably more than likely the most probable option is the Skrulls turn on Gravik, Talos somehow convince the council and convinces them, and then he's by himself. That's probably what they're going to end up doing. And it's going to be this big deal. It's going to be some sort of fight or something. He's going to do something that Talos is able to convince them that he's bad. And then he's going to be the Super Skrull against Skrulls. He's going to go off, and it's going to be him by himself, and then they're going to have to fight.
So he's going to become the Super Skrull that gets away, and then later on they'll have him back in the movie. That is
probably what's going to occur, unless they've really kept it under wraps, and there is some big reveals that aren't in there that just pop up out of nowhere.
Well, one thing is a fact. One thing that it's a fact is they're going to have to tie it up in 3 episodes.
Obviously,
and I just don't see how that could be done.
I don't know. But here's the thing: have you ever considered? What if Nick Fury isn't Nick Fury?
What if he's a Skrull?
Or an LMD?
I thought that.
LMD? Oh,
in the
comics, he's LMDs very often. So
you mean Coulson?
Yeah.
Like an android?
Yeah.
And not
he could be an LMD.
Let me ask you, in the comics, a lot of the people that were placed as Skrulls, they didn't know that they were Skrulls. In the comic, is that correct?
Some of them, they were called sleeper agents, basically. Sleeper Skrulls. Not all of them, but there were some.
That story is so completely different from what they're telling.
But they could still use that element.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, but right now, the way they've set the Skrulls up in this, where they actually take the human and put them in that little device, and then they transfer the memories and the characteristics and personality into that Skrull's brain. That Skrull knows he's a Skrull or she's a Skrull.
Honestly,
I don't think they're sleeper agents at that point.
There's really not too much they could and I think that's the point. I think they're setting them up right now as clearly like they don't have many options. There's only 2 of them basically. The other ones are kind of there, but basically there's only 2 of them. They both suck. They're both weak and old, and they have no abilities. Basically, is what they're trying to set it up as. And I think they are. I think they are setting it up to like in the episode 4 and 5. It's gonna be basically they're lost, and like episode 5 will probably end in some big thing where it's like, all right, that's it, like they have no chance. And then some way in episode 6, most likely, as I said, listen, I hope I'm wrong because I think it would be very cheap, but most likely, like I said, it's some sort of convincing speech sort of thing or convincing action sort of thing to get the Skrulls to turn on Gravik, and they don't eliminate all the Skrulls because then they can use them in later things. And I think that's the most probable and most likely.
I would agree, because I don't think it's a speech. I think it's just where.
Well, it's an action. It's
I think Gravik's gonna
go too far.
I think he's gonna. That's why I said I thought they had to do the nuke of the plane, because it would put certain things in motion that would open the door to find reveal Skrulls in places that are in high positions. So I think somewhere, maybe in episode 4. Makes sense, where something's going to transpire and he's going to give a command, and it's going to create some event, and it's going to kill Skrulls, and it's going to kill innocent Skrulls, and that's going to start really pulling his people.
I would say that's going to be episode 6. I would say this is a good comment. Like if you look at what they did with Kenobi,
you think that would be?
I'm going to say up until the last episode, it's going to be hopeless, like they did with Kenobi, where it was like. Up until the last episode, then he turned into Space Jesus. Up until the last episode, like episode 5, it got more interesting. But even in episode 5, like it was like, well,
episode 5 was not fully gone.
I'm not saying episode 5 was fully gone. What massively powerful thing did Kenobi do in episode 5? Nothing. In episode 5, through the whole series, up into episode 5, even worse than episode 5, because Kenobi didn't do anything, and then Darth Vader comes in and just like pulls the thing out with the Force, crushes it. So it's like up until that episode 6 when they faced off, it was like, and even until the actual fight, it was like there's no chance. Like, how is he going to win? We know they got to face off, but seriously, how is he going to win? And I think it's similar to that. It's up until the last episode, it's going to be hopeless. And then the last episode, it's going to turn around. And listen, here's the thing. No, there's no rule that says it has to be wrapped up in one season. They could do some sort of cliffhanger thing. That's possible. I hope not. I don't think they will, because they're not certain if they're going to get. It's not said that they're going to get another season, but it's possible that there's no law or rule that says they have to finish it in one season.
Well, I think if you ended it at episode 6 and that was the end of the season, and you weren't going to do another season, but it gave you an open door to do something on the cinema side, and then you could use kind of what they did with Thanos and just use them as Easter eggs at the ends of different movies and little pieces that were going, and then different characters.
But to do that, they would have to kill Nick Fury and Talos. Because otherwise they wouldn't be able to keep it secret.
I don't think they have to kill Nick Fury and Talos, because Nick Fury is so kicked out right now. And he's not, and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gone, so he's not part of anything at the moment. And even with the government way it is,
but listen,
but if they,
but hold on, see what they're but look at what they're doing, right? Because like again, it's the same thing with Hydra, right? The same thing with Hydra. They would make the mistake of Hydra, that the Hydra did in the Winter Soldier, right? They thought they killed Nick Fury, and Nick Fury wasn't dead, and then he came back, and he was off here doing his thing, and then even then, like he necessarily, I mean, it was a Captain America movie, but like he said, when he shows back up and he tells Alexander Pierce, you need to keep both eyes open, like I'm ahead of you. You don't know what you're dealing with. If you leave Nick Fury alive, and you're his enemy, you're making a huge mistake. And so it would be a huge mistake for them to leave him alive. He would have to be and not even just thinking if they thought they killed him, it would be illogical, unless they did some stupid thing like they sent him across the entire universe and couldn't get back. It would be illogical to believe that they could, which would be cool. The idea you're posing, I think that would be cool to set up and then have an actual secret invasion like big
Or an
movie,
actual single
but
movie.
where they're actually
Where they have like,
but,
it doesn't even have to be Avengers. It could just be a collection of different characters that you could introduce and use with Captain Marvel and so forth.
This is how the writers' room could have been, folks.
but that would be the biggest suspension of disbelief ever, to believe that Nick Fury is still alive and not putting something together to face them. That would be ridiculous. Even if they thought they killed him. So it's like you would have to kill him. Because if you kept him alive, he's building a giant contingency plan.
Well, maybe
that will destroy
they're
you.
going to kill him. I mean, the man's how old is
They
Samuel
might.
Jackson?
They might.
He's like 70. He's getting up there. And they were basically saying that he's only had. I don't see him doing a lot more of these Marvel movies. Like maybe he does just for the payday.
Well,
We're talking about Nick Fury now. We're talking about
Well, okay,
Samuel
but
Jackson.
here's the thing.
The next Expendables
He's not
movie.
dead. Obviously, he doesn't die. This is I forgot. He is in the Miss Marvel or the Marvels. He's in. They showed him in the trailers. He's in
That's
that movie.
right. So this
he
takes
doesn't
place
die
before that.
unless the Marvels occurs before this. Unless they change the date of when it occurs. I did.
They gave a
He
timeline
doesn't die.
run of that, and this
There's
takes
always
place.
LMDs.
This
And
takes
he could
place.
he could die and become a Skrull.
No, I
And be
think
a Skrull
this
in that movie.
series takes place before the Marvels, which lets you know that he survives this series.
Well, he should, but here's the thing. He could be a Skrull. He could be an LMD. Most likely he survives. Yeah, most likely he survives. So, like I said, it's the most probable thing is it's going to be some sort of change of heart in the Skrull population, and Gravik gets sort of pushed aside, and then that would be. I think that would be cheap. I think they've written themselves into a corner. They've written themselves into a corner.
If it goes the way you're saying, then they believe Gravik dies in some explosion with his inner council of a couple thugs, and they actually escape, and then they're there for later, and then they
because I think that actor is too great of an actor
the guy
to kill his character. I think I don't know. I like that guy. I like his portrayal. I like his acting.
Yeah, but
I think he's too
Disney
great.
has made decisions and killed off.
They have
done things that were just like make you scratch your head. So
They have.
at this point, who knows?
There's the summation of episode 3.
There you go.
Yeah, I liked it, and
That's a summation of
lot-
episode 3. At this point, who knows?
yeah, it could go a lot of different ways, and the next episode for sure, episode 4 is going to be pretty pivotal.
It's going to be exciting.
Pivotal.
It should be exciting. It might flop. But it should be exciting. But all right, this was a great episode. This was great stuff. Yeah. I'm glad they stepped up their game a little bit. Next week, man, a whole week to wait.
Yeah, considering we did this right after we watched the episode on the day.
Wait, we have to wait a week?
Yeah, because the next episode.
Oh, it's the next episode.
To the next episode.
Tune in to the next episode.
All right.
Hey, and if you're liking what you're seeing, comment below, like, share, subscribe, and give us ideas of what you want to hear us talk about it after Secret Invasion. And we'll see you next time.